up and share some church news.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
It's good to see you on this cold, wintry morning. With the rain blowing, and it's good to get it's winter, isn't it? So we want to say welcome. And if this is your first opportunity to come worship with us, we want to say thank you for coming. We do have morning tea afterwards. We'll actually have morning tea inside today instead of outside. We'll make it a bit more comfortable. So we want to say welcome. And welcome to the Lupus Kids. Isn't it great? I was chatting to one earlier on, and mums across the East Lakes Creech, and they wanted to come here. Isn't that good? Wonderful. At this stage, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we meet on, the Awabakal people. Pay respects to elders both past and present, all many Aboriginal people here today. Just some usual things on today. And the rest of the week. Tomorrow the shed is open for guys. Again, if you would like to learn some skills around that sort of thing, we've got some great craftsmen in the shed. It would be good to learn that craft that they have. And then tomorrow night is the Reach Home Church. And Tuesday morning is the prayer meeting here at 7:30. If you want to come and join us, that would be wonderful. If there are things that you want us to pray for, just write up a little note, give them to me or Leanne. That would be great. And then again, the shed is open on Thursday. And on Friday morning is craft. But Friday afternoon is the funeral of Gillian and Gillian's mother-in-law, Shirley. And we'd encourage you to come and support the family. That's at 3 o'clock. And if you can bring some food to have afternoon tea, that would be great. And if you could continue to think of Daryl and Gillian at this particular time. A little bird told me that it's Colin's 50th birthday.
Doesn't mean the plane's still going to crash. You've got no control up here.
We thank you, mate, for all the things you do. We hope that this year is the best year ever. I'm just going to get PJ to come, and he's got some news for us. PJ's been with us for forever now. 28 years now.
With some grace. Peter has asked me to explain myself. I'm retiring from my live stream duty as of today because for the next 4 weeks I'm going to be doing a course or program online linked into Texas time, which is therefore night shift time in Australia. So I'm going to be away for the next several weeks. I'm not going to try and get back to daytime during weekends. I'll stay on nighttime mode. That course is in connection with something called Mercy Ships. By way of background, back in 2006, on January the 1st, as I recall, I had a farewell from this hall and left to go and work with Mercy Ships over in West Africa. That's an organisation, that's a Christian medical mission organisation that looks after needs in other parts of the world, third world countries. I went there then and spent 5 years. I left the Salvation Army's recovery services work and spent 5 years basically heading up their spiritual pastoral section of their operations. I've been invited back to do that again, and I'll be leaving Australia in September, and I'll be away for 2 years. So I would need prayer, and certainly prayer to get me through these first 4 weeks of the online course would be great. Okay, thank you.
And we appreciate you guiding us through the live stream stuff in these last months. Jack's going to actually take over from that. So think about Jack. So he's going to take over and do the live stream. So that's good. stepladder. It's wonderful. And
I'm young too. I'm young too.
yeah, right. But it is great to see you in God's house.
Thanks, Peter. We have some amazing people in this church, and we certainly wish you well, PJ. You've touched many lives, and you will touch many more. So, going to join us in a song we haven't sang for a while. Beautiful song called Oceans. So if you want to stand or sit, just think about the words. I did that last night. When I was looking at this, I was thinking about the words, and they're very touching and very powerful. So join us. Beautiful song. And last night I was reading through the words. Zach had sent through the songs, and I was just reading through the words. And once I read the words to Oceans, it reminded me of a devotion that I had read recently. And I just wanted to share it with you. It's get ready to be undone, completely and totally undone, wrecked by my outrageous love that has been released in your life. You'll be amazed by what I'm about to do for you. It's time for all your giants to fall. I've heard your prayers and I've seen the tears. I've watched as you stood on shaking legs that felt like they couldn't take another step. Though the enemy works to steal, kill and destroy, my glory has made you strong. And it's time for you to see what I can do for you. It's time for you to be across the threshold of opposition and step out in anticipation. It's time to be confident. Not because I do everything the way you think I will, but because you trust me to do the things my way. Anchor yourself in my promises and soon you'll see the fruit of what I've already put into action behind the scenes. You will be astounded at the victory I'm releasing and pleasantly bewildered by the way I bring these things to pass. No, I think that's one of the hardest things for us to do is to trust our God in everything. I know I'm guilty of wanting to take control of those things, but how blessed we are that we have a God who loves us and that has died for us. And as we sing the song, Death Was Arrested, we're again reminded of what he did for us on that day.
When death was arrested, my life began.
can have a break. I was going to also share that it was Colin's birthday today, but since we've already done that, he's joined the Big 50 Club. And don't tell Big Jill Marco, but I think we've got the best part of the Lucas family here today. It's great to see them. Grant, before you sit down, I'm wondering if I was just saying before, we have some amazing people in this church that are doing things, great things out in the community, working in the community, and Grant's one of those. Now, most of you would probably know that Grant used to work at Durham, but since then he's still working in that community sector and working in the homeless sector. So we all have probably known or seen, and certainly the Salvation Army works very hard in that homelessness space. And Grant works within that space. So Grant, can you just tell us a little bit about where you work and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, so since I left Durham, I think it was probably 8 months ago now, started working for some business called Matthew Taylor Homeless Service in Newcastle, Wickham. We're a case management service. We're the only men's service and men with children from the Hunter right down to YE. We're the only service that services that area. And like I said, we're case management. We have 8 caseworkers who service that area, and then the service outreach team who goes out to our speakers as well. So yeah, it's a very busy office.
In how many people might you see a week?
So with 8 caseworkers, every caseworker has roughly between 25 and 30 clients on the caseload.
Wow.
So we have roughly around 200 odd men and children on our books that we see daily, trying to get them sustainable affordable housing.
I imagine that there's probably many more that you see but can't take on because you're either fully booked, you don't have space for them, or
We have an open door policy. We don't close our doors for anyone.
That's wonderful.
So over and above that 200 people, we have about 70 or 80 on our waiting list to be allocated caseworkers. So as much as we're servicing and case managing the guys on our caseload, we're also keeping in touch with those 70 who are waiting, who are sleeping in cars. You know, they're all over the place. It's not so much the typical homeless guy that you might see in Newcastle in a doorway. The majority of our people are lost of jobs, relationship breakdowns, drug and alcohol, which is right up my alley, and a lot of other different things. And they're just normal people, just like us, who are going through.
And I too work in the community sector, and you see so many that have just been impacted, and you hear of those people that are couch surfing. And so for all of those 200 or so that you've got on your books and the 70, 80, 90 that are out there waiting, there's probably many, many more that haven't, either don't know where to go or what to do, and are just completely alone out there. That's where I find it really difficult, that we need to get the word out that there are services out there for people. Unfortunately, there's not enough services, and as much as we try hard, there's just not enough services, is there?
No, there's probably 3 or 4 women's services in Newcastle itself, but we're the only service that services the men and men with children. And you know, it's a really sad state of affairs that there's no housing for them. So to try and manage all those people week in, week out.
Yep.
And look, we do get some success and all that sort of stuff, which keeps us turning up every day. But yeah, we just do what we can.
Yeah, can be a really hard slog, day in, day out. So, yeah. So, apart from that, so Grant last week was meant to do the CEO sleep out, which is very brave. So you were going to sleep out for a night with other CEOs or people involved in the industry. unfortunately he couldn't make it due to a family incident. But how did you prepare yourself for that mentally, even going to do that?
Well, a lot of our caseworkers and managers and that did go. You know, my backstory is that I used to be homeless as well, drug addiction and all that sort of stuff. So I know where they sort of what they go through, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's only a small price to pay, I guess, that people put themselves out there to go and do that. And it probably doesn't reflect what sleeping out in the cold really does. I mean, you know, they're pretty well looked after.
Yeah.
But in saying that, yeah, it was more about the donations and the money coming in. And all the money that was raised in Newcastle Hunter for that CEO sleeper goes directly to Matthew Taylor.
Yeah, which is
So it's directed to us.
Yeah.
It was only a month ago, we've actually taken over 2 Salvation Army houses
Yeah, wow.
for us as well, with Bernie Mondell at the helm. Used to be called Bridge House, and we now have families in those houses for long-term accommodation. So
Wow.
there's a little connection there
There
as
is,
well. And
yeah.
and look, I work closely with Oasis Hunter, Adrian Binns is a psychologist there now, and a few
Yeah.
other people for mental health services and all that sort of stuff. So there's still is.
Oh, absolutely. The services within the Hunter, and I see this in the MySpace as well, that we have to work collaboratively with other organisations and other, so it's an important thing. Just goes to show, I really just wanted to highlight that we have, it's not just the Salvos that's out there doing it, it's other services that are doing it, and we have amazing people within this church that are out there working with homeless, disabled, many other people. I know Sue working with Kairos, with people that have been impacted by prison. So there is lots of people in the church doing lots of great things out in the community. PJ going off to work with mercy ships. And you know, the best thing that you can do for all of those organisations is pray. That's, you know, it is pray for them, pray for the people in this church that are going out there in the community. And sometimes remember that, you know, if you hear or see of someone that could use some help, a man that's got some children that needs some help, Grant's a perfect person to talk to. He may not be able to physically do something for them himself, but he may know where to point someone in that right direction. So there's a great many resources here, and let's tap into them. So thanks, Grant.
Can I just share?
Sure.
It struck a chord when we talked about praying and stuff. But when I was with the army out in Durham, it was just a thing that you did because it was not expected, but it was okay to do that stuff. When I went to this interview for this job and you know, shared a little bit about where I come from and stuff, they basically said to me that we don't pray for people and we don't push our Christian values and views on people. I thought, well, that's okay. I'll just, you know, carry on. But it was only last week that a new guy coming up did an intake and he'd seen my tattoos of faith and hope and my crucifix on my arms and stuff, and said, that's interesting, that I feel a lot closer to God as I've come here. So there was an opportunity that I didn't miss, that I went in. That's happened 3 or 4 times over the last few months, where I looked at those little moments, that little door would be ajar, and I need to jump through that door and all that sort of stuff. And as it turned out, that this guy I got housed very next time. So that's something that never really happens that quick. I got on the phone to some people at New New South Wales and Compass Housing, and they housed me very next day.
God was so in that. Yeah. Thank you, Grant. I too have a similar story where I obviously got a cross around my neck, and I went to visit a family one day, and immediately she just said to me, "Are you a Christian?" And I said, "In fact, I am." And she just said, anyway, she started to share a little bit with me, and now when I go to visit that family, the first thing we do is we pray. And I don't work for a Christian organisation at all, so it's a very personal thing. But there are opportunities out there in our workspaces to be able to share God's word and the love of God. So, so that's just part of, thanks Frank, for that, just your everyday life of going out there and helping people is quite amazing. Peter's going to come up and have share the message with us today. And I think he seems like he's pretty organised, so I'm going to take this. Oh yes, kids are going to go out to kids' church. So, Sue's out there, and I think we've got a full team of big bugs out there today, since Hannah's here. That's pretty cool. Thanks, Peter.
We're on? We're on. Morning everybody, it's good to see you. It's good to be back. It's good to be back home. Mind you, on the way home, we left down there, we got about, for those of you who don't know, my son and daughter-in-law have a farm 6 hours away down in the southwest, and we've been down there for nearly a fortnight, preparing paddocks and sowing wheat and all sorts of things. And so we left down there at, we got up at 10 to 3 in the morning, we left at 3:30, and we hit the M7 at about 9:45, and I wanted to turn around and go home. That is, back to tomorrow. It was just terrible. So it's good to be back home and to see you, and a big thanks to the team. Great job. Well, look, we're so blessed to have this team that is helping run this place, that I can go away. Not I'm supposed to be the leader, but we can go away and I don't have to worry about the thing. I really don't. It is. Yeah. Thank you very much. For them, they actually have their personal lives and work lives and all sorts of things, and yet are here leading us through this particular time. What do we do first? Let's talk. I'll get my papers in the right way. I wondered why my papers weren't in the right order, because that's why I'm in the right way. Today we continue this series called Intentional Living, and we're going to talk about a huge subject called living intentionally, discipline over regret. Now, the moment you think about that, you think, isn't that the way? But it's back in 1956, that's a long time ago, isn't it? That's when the Olympic Games were in Melbourne.
I wasn't born.
We're not going to ask the people to put up their hands who were born before that. But back in 1956, Doris Day, who was the highlight and the baby of the time, sang a song, Hey Sarah, Sarah, whatever will be, will you? Now, I don't want you to sing it. See, I knew that would happen. The moment you start doing that sort of thing, people want to sing. Hey Sarah, Sarah. Okay. It's actually, I believe it's an old English term that says, whatever will be, will be. And it featured in an Alfred Hitchcock movie called The Man Who Knew Too Much, which won the Academy Awards and all sorts of things. However, the song is based around an idea called fatalism. Now, fatalism says, let me get this right, that all events are predetermined and therefore inevitable. It's sort of like, whatever you do doesn't matter. Whatever you think, what you think you're going to do, everything else like it's none of that, because everything's predetermined and it's nothing else matters. And that's why it's called fatalism. Okay? And there are those that believe that in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, this is actually the writer's investigation into fatalism. And it's interesting how the tentacles of that have actually probably always been there, but have permeated our culture in many ways. It was interesting while we were down there, last Sunday afternoon was the 70th birthday of one of the guys of the church where my son and daughter-in-law worship. It's a Lutheran church, a lovely family, and it was his birthday. And he was telling about a farmer he knew who's got lots of sheep, but he doesn't repair his fences because he reckons if he repairs his fences and he sells it, all they'll do is pull them down. Now, sheep run, at the moment, his sheep run everywhere. We actually had one in amongst ours the other day, so we actually had to get all the sheep in, draft them out, and get his sheep out. Why? Because he thinks, well, if I put the fences up and I sell them, I'm only going to push them over. Okay? That's fatalism. You might think that's a bit extreme. Okay? But there are other things of it. You know, like some people believe in threes. Okay? If 3 people die, if first 2 people die, well, who's the next one that's going to die? Okay? Yeah, you hear that? Well, that's fatalism. Okay? This idea that, well, it's inevitable anyway. Okay? Or you go to drive into a car park somewhere, and someone drives in front of you and say, wouldn't that be right? That's the way it always is, isn't it? That's fatalism. Think about it now. How does it permeate our thinking and our culture? This whole idea of Kone Sara Sara, whatever you read, it's inevitable. Why am I talking about that? Because over the last few weeks we've been talking about living intentionally, which is almost the opposite of fatalism. Intentional living is saying, I want to live a considered, purpose-planned life. That's what intentional living is. And in the first week, Al Pearson preached, and I watched it on YouTube, and did that great quote out of Hebrews 11 about Moses. Okay, and it was about living intentionally with purpose over popularity, and how Moses gave up the whole popularity thing about being one of the princes of Egypt to be the leader of the Jewish nation, and therefore God used him. And then last week Joy preached about surrender over control, the whole thing about, how we get freaked out. Why, if you have to have everything right, like we've got to have all our shopping, all our washing right, and all the beds right, but it's even much more subtle than that, isn't it? And then Joy used this great piece of scripture out of Proverbs chapter 3, which says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct your paths. He'll direct your paths. Can you see that here we're talking about almost like the opposite? Intentional living is the opposite of fatalism. And today we're going to look at living intentionally with discipline over regret. In John chapter 16 and verse 33, Jesus said, in this life you will have trouble. Some translations translate the word trials or pain. In this world you will have trouble or pain. Pain and trials are really part of life, aren't they? No matter who we are, you look back at your life, there have been troubles. I look back at my life, and I thank God that while I was having those trials, he was there with me. When I got electrocuted with over $32,000, I'm glad he was on my side, I'll tell you. In this world that you will have trouble. But Jesus continues on, and says, fear not, I've overcome the world. That's what he said. I've overcome the world. You might have trials, and you might have pain, but I've overcome the world. Some pain we can't avoid. We get sick, a car accident, someone betrays us. There's some pain that we can't, but there is some pain that we can avoid. And that's why living intentionally is important. You've got an exam coming up. So what do? You watch a late night movie, you go to bed late and you fail the exam. That's pain that's unavoidable, but that's avoidable. You eat in an unhealthy way over the years and then discover you've got type 2 diabetes. This is pain, but it was avoidable. You ignore the slip, swap, slap advice of sunscreens and hat and sunglasses, and you end up with skin cancer. And you go off to Mark Peterson, he sharpens his scalpel up and he says, what part of your body can I cut out now? And you regret. If only I regret. Some pain is avoidable. A guy by the name of Jim Rohn said this: we must all suffer one of two pains. Pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The difference is discipline weighs ounces while regret weighs tons. Two pains. Discipline or regret. They're inevitable. My experience is, over the years, is if we don't learn what appropriate discipline is as young people, our life becomes a series of, I wouldn't say the word catastrophe, but pain, until we learn the importance of discipline. You see it, over the years I've actually had a fair amount to do with parents who have had children who are wayward. And we've talked about how to put some of those disciplines in place before they get to 18. Because I said, at the end of the day, who's going to be the boundary? Who's going to be the disciplinarian? I pray God it's not the courts and the prison that says this is where discipline is. But unfortunately, that's the inevitable factor for some people. Discipline over regret. So what can we might learn from the Bible about this? The Bible is full of stories of victory and of pain. And so this morning what I'd like us to investigate is the story in Genesis chapter 4. If you've got your Bibles there, you might like to open with me. Genesis chapter 4. And we're going to start at verse 2b, and we're going to read through verse 16. And it says, if someone's got a church Bible and got a number, you can just tell us. Number? 6, page 6, if you've got a church Bible in. It says, later she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, but Abel brought the fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favour on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favour. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. It desires to have you, but you must master it. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, let us go out to the field. And while they were out in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? I don't know, he replied. Am I my brother's keeper? The Lord said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. You are now under a curse, and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. But the Lord said to him, no, not so. If anyone kills Cain, he will suffer vengeance 7 times over. Then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. It's a great story. Lots of things for us to learn. You see, I think living intentionally, one of the first things we need to do is to have a disciplined mind. To have a disciplined mind. When we read this story, we see that Cain struggles with this rejection from God. He's disappointed. He's angry. His gift has been rejected. Now, my understanding is his gift's rejected, but there was always a pathway for him to come back. God said so. If you do what is right, will you not come back in my presence? So God wasn't rejecting him out of hand. He was just saying, you need to get your act right. You need to get your motive right. You need to recognise who I am. You know to do what is right. And in verse 7, there's this great line where God says to him, but if you do what is right, and if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door and wants to devour you. Okay? You must master it. That's what it says. You must master it. This stuff that's happening inside you, you must master it. You have the power. You must master it. God's saying that to Cain. And we know that with our reading, we know that he didn't do that. He didn't master it. He allowed his brain, he allowed his grief, he allowed his disappointment, he allowed his anger to manipulate him. So the first step, I believe, in a disciplined mind is to be able to take captive whatever is in our brain. Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 5, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. We take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. We take every thought captive to Christ. We take, not just some, we take every thought captive to Christ. What does that actually mean? Well, what it means is that when we're thinking about things, we try to think about, well, how does that fit with Jesus? How does that fit in the way he lived? How does that fit in the way he spoke? How does that fit? We take every thought captive. You see, the issue is we all have wayward minds. And I try and pray earnestly. And you want to fix the car, or there's this thing you've got to do next week, and you think to yourself, I'm trying to pray, God. Okay, and so you fix your mind up again, I'm going to try and pray, and everything goes like that. And you start to pray again, and all of a sudden you go to sleep. Okay, well, you just give up. I can't do this. Okay? We all suffer with the wayward mind. We all have thoughts that come in that are really not of us, almost. They affect how we are. Paul Church and I were talking earlier on about some things, and he quoted a quote from William Booth. William Booth said, you know, you can't stop the birds flying overhead, but you can stop them nesting in your head. It's about being able to manage these things that actually come. I know for me, when I get some of these vague thoughts that come, that just for me they're abhorrent. I say, God, I don't want to think that way. I just simply do that. God, I don't want to think that way. You know, trying to keep the house is like trying to keep the ocean back. Okay, and I pray that as I continue to grow in Christ amongst them, they might become less, but they're there inevitably. Paul went on in Philippians chapter 4 and said to Philippians, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Why did Paul say that to the Philippians? Because he wanted them to have a change of the way they thought. Wanted to change. And I think in helping us to have a disciplined mind, thinking about good things. You see, negative thinking is corrosive. Negative thinking is destructive. And Paul is saying, fill your mind with good things. You know, the old adage as far as computers was, you know, garbage in, garbage out. Well, our brain is very much the same. You know, what we watch or things like that. You see, our brain is like a sponge. You know, our brain is like a sponge. If there's a pool of water there, and you throw a sponge down on a pool of water, it can't say, I'm not going to absorb this. Why is that? Because it's the nature of the sponge to absorb. So is our brain. And that's why we need to protect ourselves. It's not being cute or absent from the world, but there are some things we just shouldn't watch or do or think or read. Why? Because it doesn't serve us in the disciplined mind. Many, many years ago, I watched a group of girls playing a PlayStation that had women, and it was violent. And I thought to myself, this is actually going to come back and bite us as a community. All these violent games, and then people say, oh, they're only games, and that's all. But it comes back. And I was watching a thing on TV that in Britain, at the moment, there is an outbreak of violent crime by women. That's just amazed the police service there and the community. Now, we know that men are violent, we know that. Okay? And we're not making any excuses for that. But this is what actually happens. We don't discipline our brain. That's why Paul is saying, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, whatever is excellent, think about these things. Have this disciplined mind. Let's return to the story of Cain. And in verses 8 and 9, we see the consequences of his failure to heed God's warning. And 8 and 9 says, Now Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out into the field. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother? I don't know, he replied. Am I my brother's keeper? This is the consequence. This is the consequence of his failure to discipline his mind. And even more than that, when we read through even further, in verses 10 to 15, it says, And the Lord said to him, What you have done? What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out from the ground. Now you're under a curse and driven from the ground, which is opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the land, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is more than I can bear. Today you've driven me out from the land. I will be hidden from your presence, and I will be a restless wanderer on earth. And whoever finds me will kill me. I want you to notice there is no place in what he's saying of admission, of confession, but has the audacity to blame God. You, he says to God, you have driven me out, not this is what I've done. He has regret, see? He has regret, but his regret is not allowing him to take ownership of what he's done. There is no admission of confession of wrong. It's interesting, I'm a bit of a fan of the 10 to 12 steps. And I wonder what difference it might have been for Cain if he had found step 10. Step 10 says, continue to pay personal infantry and where wrong promptly admit. That's what it says. Continue. That's an intentional thing. Continue. It's an intentional thing. Where wrong, promptly admit. That's an intentional action. But he didn't know that. He didn't know how to do that. And so he's locked in his regret. You see, I think the answer for regret in our lives are these three spiritual disciplines of admission, confession, and repentance. So that if we sit with regret, not all of us have regret, and some of them are quite massive, though, that we probably need to deal with. I remember a number of years ago, I recognised my absence from my boys when I was growing up. I was so busy at Miracle Hazelwood, it was like a 24-hour job, they could call me at any time, and my boys missed out. And I regret about that. So one Christmas, I wrote them each a letter saying, I'm sorry. This is what I've done. I hope that you can forgive me. The response back from them was amazing. And Robert walked up, who's our more emotional one, walked up. He just walked up and put his arms around me. Scott, our youngest, who is probably the furthest away from the Lord, he said, thanks, Dad. Admission, confession, repentance is the answer for the regret that we might have. When I was doing the research on this subject, they talked about, I wonder what it would be like if you were 80 and you're on your deathbed. What regrets will you take with you of things you didn't do, you should have done? But that's what living intentionally with dealing with regret is. Being able to admit, this is what I did. And I'm sorry about that. And I'm going to change the way I live. Living intentionally requires action. And it needs practice. Living intentionally with Jesus as our captain gives us purpose and direction in the way we live, and to reach the potential that's hidden in all of us. On Friday we were here for Matt Blessington's funeral, and they read out of all the things that he and Joan had done. Joan's funeral. And we read out all the things that Matt and Joan did in ministry. And when they came here, okay, I said, you know, it could have been quite easy for them to hang up their shingle and say, we've done our turn, okay, we're just going to live in this nice house down here, and we'll come here, we'll go home, and that's what we'll do. But they didn't do that. Okay? They got involved. In their senior years, they got involved. And became part of this place. You see, I believe that God has a place and a purpose, and He wants to continue to grow us in our potential for His ministry. Now, maybe this whole Jesus thing is just a new thing for you. I want to say to you, you're on a brand new, there's a start for a life that is beyond your understanding and beyond your imagination. Because that's what I believe God can do in our lives. I'm going to say I was a fairly illiterate young man back in Leeton when I was 17, 18, 16. And I came to the Lord and it changed my life. And when I look back over my life, I couldn't imagine the things that I've experienced and been blessed by. You know, I went to Papua New Guinea for 3 years and worked in Papua New Guinea. It was just amazing. I met the most wonderful woman in my life. It's been part of my life for 50 years. I have 3 wonderful children and 8 grandchildren. I worked in recovery services for 30 years. I represented the Salvation Army on international boards. You know, if I had said that to the 16-year-old who was struggling and everything else like that, this is what I would have said, oh, rubbish. But this is what God can do when we live intentionally with Him. Open the door, allow Him to continue to work in our lives. I'm certain PJ, when he first came to Miracle Haven, and if I had said to him, look, I want to tell you, in 2020 you're going to retire and go and work on a ship in Africa. At that stage, he was made out believing about God. This is what God can do when we live intentionally. But we need to continue to practice. In Galatians chapter 5 and verse 22 and 23 it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness and self-control. Here is the fruit of the Spirit. When we live intentionally, this is the fruit we produce. It's there. Now, I brought some lemons. They're in a bucket. Lemons out there, and Jeanette's got some limes out there. You can take them home free. Now, they don't just grow by accident. Okay? We have to do. I have to go in and weed underneath this thorny thing and get it stuck. And I have to put fertiliser out. And I have to put mulch down. I have to encourage that growth. Well, that's the same with these things. Okay. Practice love, practice joy, practice peace, practice patience, practice kindness, practice goodness, practice faithfulness, practice gentleness, practice self-control. What do they say? Practice makes perfect. That's what it says. Practice makes perfect. I've been out at Robert's place and we've been planting acres and acres of wheat. And one of the things I actually had to do was run over with an offset disc and get some of the rubbish out of the place, so that when we went through the combine, it would create this seed bed, the right kind of seed bed for the wheat to grow, where exactly the same. We need to practice these things, living intentionally as a disciplined mind with disciplined action, living intentionally with Jesus as our captain, so that we can actually continue to grow ourselves, but grow in ministry and in service to other people. We talked about Grant, his ministry, Megan and her ministry. Out there, do it. I believe that's the whole thing about living intentionally. Being able to move away from the tentacles of fatalism that said, so we're going to be rubbish anyway, why try? Jesus is saying, I've overcome the world. Put your faith in me. I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to sing a song. And I don't know what God's been talking to you this morning about. Maybe it's highlighted some regrets that you have had in your life and you need to do something about it. I don't know. In the Salvation Army, we have these forms here. It's a place of ministry. It's a place where you can come and pray. No one's actually going to come and talk to you. Okay, if you want to come and pray, pray. If you want to talk to somebody afterwards, come and find us. Okay? For that to happen. But if God's spoken to you this morning, I want you to respond. What has He said to you? He said to you, look, you have this regret that you need to bring to me. And we're going to work on it together. As He said to you, you need to work on the love in your life. You need to work on the joy in your life. You need to work on your patience. Whatever it is that God has said to you this morning, encourage you to come forward and pray.
We're going to sing our final song for today. We're going to take up our offering during that time. Just want to remind you that morning tea is going to be inside today. Thank you guys up on the sound desk and PJ, and for those that are serving morning tea today, and Sue out there doing kids trip. So thank you everyone for doing their bit, and we're going to be reminded of who we are in Him.